key changes that NIS2 is bringing in are, it's a much wider scope, so much more organizations are going to fall in scope, but more specifically for organizations that are in scope, some of the key elements are going to be, they're going to have a very structured approach to incident detection and reporting. So there's going to be, a requirement to report to their supervisory body, which will likely be something like the NCSC in the UK or Ireland, or their equivalent in a European country. They're going to have to provide detail in those reports quite rapidly within 24 hours, and then an update within 72. And there may be additional reporting requirements to other entities, for example, in different areas. There can be multiple supervising entities. So for financial services, you could also fall under DORA, which would require you to report to maybe someone like your central bank. Or if you were in maybe a telecommunications, you could have to report to someone like Comreg in Ireland. I think the other key changes are around requirements for senior leadership to get cyber risk and cyber management training. So they need to be able to, they have a lot more responsibility now, so they need to understand there's the cyber risk management program and the decisions and appropriate budget and management of those. So I think that's another key element. And then other than that, most of it is stuff that organizations should be doing anyway, but it's going to get a lot stricter. So, good cybersecurity hygiene, all the normal things you would expect people to be doing, managing your identities, things like multi-factor, ensuring you've got good business continuity and backup plans, making sure that you've got good data classification and data security controls in place, and that you've good kind of detection and automated remediation tools like an EDO or something like that in place. And then probably key will be training, making sure your staff get good security awareness training. So all of this is stuff we all should be doing, but now we're going to be audited and required to do so. Again, there will be more detail published, but essentially, if you suspect a security incident or an issue that's going to affect the delivery of your services that are in scope for NIS2, so all the critical services that you provide, you will need to make an incident report. If it's a cyber security incident, that will be going to your NCSC or equivalent, your National Cybersecurity Centre. Or if it's maybe not a cybersecurity incident, maybe if it's a service availability incident, that will more likely be going to your supervisory body. Again, that could be someone like Comreg here in Ireland, or Department of Finance maybe, or the central bank. Lots of different potential agencies involved there, not all clear who they will be yet. And that report would need to be done, within 24 hours, and then you need to follow up within 72 hours with more detail. So the idea is, if you have a suspected incident, you report that early, and then you follow up to see, is it actually an incident, and what is the level of impact. And then there could be further reporting requirements depending on how bad an incident is and who's affected. You might have to make reporting to affected customers, or and that could be individual people, depending on what kind of service it is, or it could be other entities that you're providing services to. There's lots of supply chain elements could feed into that. And there will be templates being published soon about what that reporting will look like. We're hoping to see some of those. We're starting to already see some of those, I think, starting to come out for DORA, and NIS2 should be very similar. Yeah, so in order to kind of assess your maturity or your position on where you are now vis-a-vis NIS2, well, there's a good bit of information out there on NIS2, but not a lot of detail, because we're still pending legislation to come out in all of the European countries, which will happen later this year. But generally, my understanding is, you can take the kind of 10 key principles that have been published, and also looking at things like the NIST 800 framework. Version 2 has just been published, the cybersecurity framework this year, is what I think they're going to be basing a lot of the measurement controls about. So you could do an assessment against maturity around something like that. Or you could work with a partner who offers these kind of services. That's something that we are working with customers on at the moment. We do have tooling and services available to do that kind of maturity assessment. And really, it's just a gap analysis to see, where are the key areas that you don't have or you need to do a little bit of work on to meet NIS2. Most of those hopefully will be in things like the net new stuff around incident reporting and handling, and maybe the training or at board level. You would hope that a lot of the rest of the stuff is things that organizations are already doing. I think the biggest challenges that I would see is usually down to resourcing, so budget and staff. There is a well-known and well-publicized global shortage of skilled cybersecurity staff. There are issues with the workload of people who work in cybersecurity, particular areas like SOC and incident response. Burnout is a major issue. So there's definitely some resourcing issues. This is another compliance layer that organizations will have to deal with, might be on top of existing ones. For a lot of organizations, this is going to be a net new compliance layer. They might not have had anything before. They might not have done ISO or SOC or anything else. So, there's going to be additional cost involved in terms of personnel or outsourcing to third-party managed security service providers or consultancy agencies. So I think resourcing and budget are going to be the biggest issues here, and availability of those services, because there will be a bit of a rush to use those services or to try and hire staff as the legislation lands and this becomes more mature. It's probably going to take at least a year to settle in. We saw that with GDPR. But yeah, I think that's going to be the biggest challenge. The supply chain risk is probably the management of supply chain risk from an NIS2 perspective is probably another net new area, to be honest. There's going to be a lot of requirement now to vet your supply chain, focused on the ones that are key to your critical services that will be in scope for NIS2. So, if you're providing, energy, and you have suppliers that are critical in terms of providing the hardware or software to enable you to provide your services, you're going to have to make sure that they are, up to your standards when it comes to their cybersecurity maturity and their ability to report to you on incidents and issues. So it's going to require a lot more diligence now around the supply chain. But probably the first bit of advice is to look at your entire supply chain and identify who those key critical suppliers are, and then see what level of security information you already know about them, and then whether you need to do a more detailed cybersecurity risk assessment on them, and how you're going to manage that on an ongoing basis, and make sure you've got good agreements in place around if they have issues, that they will report to you in a timely fashion so that you can make your reports in a timely fashion, and that they have good controls that you are comfortable meet your standards. Yeah, so obviously, again, we're still, in terms of best practices or requirements around NIS2, we don't have the detail yet in terms of the legislation, but it will be basic cybersecurity hygiene is what needs to be done. So we're looking for MFA, so good MFA. Any MFA is good, but ideally something that's backed by an authenticator type solution. Biometrics would be quite useful there as well. Good coverage across all of your endpoints, that you have visibility of what is going on in them in terms of software installation or potential malware activity. So having an agent that's running on all your endpoints that gives you that kind of information telemetry, and ideally will automatically quarantine or do automatic fixing of those devices, so some kind of EDR solution. Good visibility at your network layer of what's going on at the perimeter and your internal. Understanding what your baselines look like, so it's easier for you to detect anomalies So being able to do good baseline analysis, and then really looking to see when something is out of the ordinary. Good data security controls, so having data classification is going to be a requirement, so that you understand what your critical confidential data is and you protect that accordingly. And that might mean more stringent controls around that, maybe using encryption and maybe things like DLP to prevent that data being exfiltrated at the endpoint or network or SaaS layer. Good cyber awareness training for all your staff, effective cyber awareness training, so not just tick the box type training, your regular testing, test of knowledge will be very important. And good internal audit programs, so that you can check that all of your controls are actually working. So you're not just implementing the controls, you're measuring the effectiveness of those controls on a regular basis. I think that's going to be very, very important as well. So those would all be kind of key, good practices that I would expect organizations should have in place. And if they have those in place, they're going to be a long way towards being compliant with NIS2.